So the astrology of the week of 24 January 2022 to 30 January 2022 is all about Saturn this week and Capricorn. We see an epic pileup, or I guess a minor pileup. We had the epic pileup right in 2020, but this is a pileup of planets in Capricorn this week. And so what's called to mind astrologically and thematically are the initiation features of this cardinal earth sign ruled by heavy Saturn. And as we're moving into 2022, there's really moments of initiation this week where we can think about the power of Saturn to get us kick-started for the rest of the winter and the rest of 2022. So let's move into the astrology. Let's dive into the astrology this week. My name is S.J. Anderson. Welcome to my channel. Every week I have a video, weekly astrology. I release it, talk about the astrology of the week, the themes, look at a few charts, just break it down because, astrology, the symbols of the planets moving in the sky are so important for our reality. And one thing I've been wanting to talk about, meaning to talk about, is the idea about a weekly video, a weekly astrology video that is really the most general type of delineation you can provide. It's general delineations because I'm not speaking to one person with their chart in front of me talking about their lives and engaging these symbols in a very specific way about someone's life. I'm speaking about general energies that may apply most generally to everyone in the world. And so there's a little bit of a challenge or the limits of this weekly astrology videos that, I can't look at what we call in astrology a root chart or a radix, where we ground everything in a nativity or a root chart, and then the transits are impacting a root chart. In this video, I don't do this. Sometimes I may refer to the thema mundi as the root chart or the birth chart of the universe. We can look at transits to the thema mundi. This week is actually interesting because in that thema mundi you have Cancer rising and Capricorn on the angle, on the descendant. And so it explains the power of Capricorn in our reality. And I do want to talk about this week, I'll get here in the video later, about Capricorn and Cancer and the importance of this axis as a fundamental kind of part of the reality. And it has to do with, of course, the Moon and Saturn, two planets that are so fundamental to the, we might call it the matrix of reality, as I've been talking about it even last week. But so we could also use like a national chart. A lot of astrologers want to talk about the US Sibley chart. I hesitate to do that because I have a global audience and I don't want to alienate or, disinclude, people that are watching me from all over the world. The US is certainly a superpower. Maybe it likes to think of itself as one. That may be fading as we get into the 21st century, but so maybe there's an argument to look at the Sibley chart as a way to understand global moments. And as an aside, if we wanted to do that, we would think about the Pluto return that's happening in the United States. It's a triple pass Pluto return. Pluto is coming in the transiting sky to the same spot in the zodiac as it was in 1776 when the Declaration of Independence was signed. It's 3 times in 2022. It really defines politically this whole year. And it happens in that second house of the Sibley chart. Financial upheaval, financial turnover. And we're seeing it this last week. Stocks sell off, crypto sells off. And I think we're getting into this moment where the financial kind of reckoning of this global superpower is going to happen. Chickens will be coming home to roost. And that's a whole separate video, a whole separate conversation, but it's another example. I just put this as an example of a root chart. We could examine reality through that root chart of the Sibley US birth chart. But most of the time I'm looking at what we would call as astrologers natural significations of the planets. And this is the planets, what they mean without being placed in a house. And so we can look at a planet, for example, Venus, the powerful planet of love, beauty, adornment, it's the senses, sex, all of those things that Venus can signify, independent of where it is in the zodiac. And we can kind of get symbols and symbolically interpret Venus without having a root chart. And so that's mainly what I try to do here, is sort of general energetic check-ins that hopefully can add value, and I've seen them add value. I've seen, just examining the natural significations of the planets independent of anything else. We also call this transits to transits, sometimes where it's just the transiting planets to each other, that can have great importance and great, can import and kind of impinge directly on what we're going through collectively. And so that's why I continue to do this, because I find it very powerful. Plus, if you know your natal chart, your nativity, you can place what I describe in the context of your chart. Some of the advanced astrologers out there may then be able to maybe be inspired to delineate your own chart with what I'm describing. So, and then lastly, I mean, electional astrology. Some schools, and I'm kind of in this school, you can extract it from the natal chart, and you can find elections that don't require you to have a root chart at all. Though it is good to consider that root chart. I tend to prioritize that second to a really nice election independent of anything else. And so we can do that in this video. That's why when I pick a transit of the week, those don't require, or it's not necessary to have that root chart to feel the power of those transits. So that's a little bit of the introduction. I mean, where we are contextually with the astrology, it's all about Saturn, pileups in Aquarius and Capricorn. After this week, we will have 5 traditional planets if you include the moon, because the moon will travel through Capricorn and Aquarius this week and then next week. 5 of those so 6 traditional planets, pardon me, if you include the moon. The only planet not ruled by Saturn come this weekend and early next week will be Jupiter, hanging out in Pisces, strong and doing its own thing. And so this is really the climax of this first part of the year, the tale of 2 powerful great planets. You have Saturn and Aquarius powerful, Jupiter and Pisces powerful, and they're reverse to each other. They don't make an aspect. And so there's kind of a 2-track thing happening, which is like the truth and healing and forgiveness and the cleansing of Jupiter and Pisces, combined with maybe, you know, the vigor, the kind of long game and kind of rigor was the term. Vigor, I guess you need vigor to kind of last in a long game, but the kind of rigor and vigor of that Saturn dominated sky, the kind of hard edge, the roughness to it that requires us to dig deep and stay with something. So we're on a 2-track moment here. And I think this week is really a climax of this Saturn moment here. And next week, of course, but then it begins to dissipate as the sun, I think the first planet to leave is the sun, and Mercury will leave. I forgot which one goes first. I think maybe the sun leaves Aquarius, and then we start getting this pileup in Pisces, which will climax in April. So, okay, this is a little bit of the introduction. I just wanted to throw this before we get started. Let's get started now. Let's go into the planets, what they're doing this week, and let's check in on the astrology. So yeah, this week I have here all about Capricorn, all about Capricorn. Look what happens this week. Mars enters Capricorn on 24 January. That is Monday, 2 in the afternoon in Central Europe. So right out of the gate, we get a big shift this week. Remember, Mars is 6 weeks in a sign. Unless it goes retrograde, then it can spend a lot longer in a sign. We'll have later this year, Mars in Gemini, 8 months. But so these are, Mars, it's not as fast as Mercury or Venus or the Sun. It's a little bit slower. And so these sign changes with Mars can be felt, and they can be felt strongly. I think it's going to settle us into this year. Mars in Capricorn is exalted. That means that we can deploy the kind of passionate spark of action that Mars gives us, but contained in the committed projects we have, the kind of container of a powerful Saturn and the commitments that Saturn calls us, you know, to combine with Mars. Things can really get done with a Capricorn Mars, which is why it's exalted there. And so that kicks off this week. And I think it'll come as a welcome shift here now that Mars is out of Sagittarius, Ketu out of Sagittarius. And we've opened Sagittarius now with Jupiter and Pisces starting this week. Anybody that's a Sagittarius rising can really breathe a sigh of relief and maybe start coming into your power now. Or wherever Sagittarius is in your chart, Sagittarius is fully open now to operate, especially with Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, so powerful in Pisces. Very exciting week for mutable signs, actually, because there's a clearing up that happens now as Mars comes into Capricorn, and I think it'll settle us. You know, I've been talking about how busy I've been with Mars and Sagittarius, and things are settling now, and I'm really happy to kind of settle back in on like the saddle and just get readjusted on that saddle and dig in for the longer journey and journeys for, you know, whatever you got going on in your life. I got a lot going on, but just kind of settle into some movement ahead that's a little bit more contained and deliberate instead of the jostling and kind of craziness of a Mars and Sagittarius. That ends. So very exciting this week. And what happens on Wednesday, 4 a.m. in Central Europe, is that Mercury retrogrades back into Capricorn. And so we now start seeing this stellium form. Mars, Venus, and Mercury are now all meeting in Capricorn. And of course, Pluto's there hanging out, the dwarf planet. But of the 7 traditional, now we have this transiting stellium. And so a lot of the parts of the chart that are ruled by Mercury, Venus, and Mars are all meeting this conglomeration in Capricorn all at a time while Saturn is strong in Aquarius. So there's a lot of power happening. I think we could see power moves in the world, power dynamics. Remember where Mars was during the 9/11 chart? 9/11 2001 in Capricorn, had just ingressed into Capricorn in that chart. And so we have, you can see that the strength of kind of the power plays or the power moves on a global scale. There is certainly a lot happening with geopolitics, and not to go into that too much, but I think we're going to see climaxes geopolitically during this Mars and Capricorn transit. It happens often when you have a powerful Mars, where I think probably people are using astrology. I mean, look, if I had an army, I would certainly hire astrologers, absolutely, and be checking in with them, planning. So maybe we're going to see some of those moves and that kind of chess work, and then the active force of a Saturn supported Mars moving into reality. And you know, I pray for peace always. I'm a peacenik. I'm a believer in laying down those arms and just kind of a hippie style model. Maybe it's naive, but you know, guilty as charged. I think it's more of a spiritualized, peace-loving philosophy for me. So when I talk about the geopolitical stuff, I'm really delineating from what I'm reading. You know, just go check the headlines this week. Type in, invade, and you can see the debates about Ukraine in particular and what's happening there. And you know, so it's already triggered. And so, you know, I just think we're going to be working with this even more with Mars supported and strong in Capricorn. So let's just keep going here. I don't want to get too much. The thing I want to describe too much off the ball here, and then finally I'll just point out here, it's going to be Saturday, 10 in the morning Central Europe, 9:45 a.m. Venus will actually station and then now start moving direct. It's stationing, depending on how you define what is a station. There's different mathematics there, but different ranges. But basically, this is the moment, Saturday, 9:45 in the morning, where Venus now begins to move forward again. And it's exciting because we've just survived, we will have survived a 40 days and 40 nights of Venus in the underworld, being reborn in Capricorn. And that happens this week. And so you can see how so much, all the action is right here in Capricorn, and then the moon comes through Capricorn on the weekend. So it's very much this theme of Capricorn, and that's what I want to discuss. That's what I want to explore a little bit deeper. I'll do it here. I mean, so Pan is this god, the Greek god dealing with, you know, sex, lasciviousness. He's a goat god. The story is Typhon, which is a strange energy. There's a lot of modern magical traditions writing about Typhon. But these are kind of dark forces, right? Finds Pan, and Pan jumps into the Nile. His lower body gets turned into a fish. And so there's the sea goat. That's when Capricorn is born. It's the head of Pan and then the fish at the bottom. And it's just jam-packed with symbolism and jam-packed with themes that, let's just explore a few of them here. Pan is lascivious, is sex-based, is known to just have an appetite. Mars being exalted in Capricorn, Mars a planet of sex and the active force of sex and the pursuer energy, I think goes into how we can understand Capricorn. It's an earth sign. Earth signs are ruled by the moon and Venus and Mars by triplicity. So we're dealing with internal forces in Capricorn, internal forces of great power. And we're calling upon the body, the sex powers and the forces of sex as a kind of foundation structure of reality. And you know, this is one way to understand Capricorn, that you can initiate through kind of an examination of the internal forces of power in our body. Remember what sex does. It produces, it's generative. So much is motivated by a desire for reproduction. A lot of, especially when we're young, we're just out, unconsciously driven by forces of sex and the desire for it. But in magical traditions and in spiritual traditions, sex is often used and worked with. The internal forces that run to the heart of our being and the heart of who we are. We might say the sex power, right? The deeper internal sex drive that can be utilized spiritually. So you have, like in the Tai Chi tradition, the Taoist tradition. There's whole schools of tantra quote unquote, where you're working with the chi and the sexual component of that. You have the tantric sexual schools where you kind of transmute those forces. In the modern yogic Western traditions, there's all kinds of people writing and working with these powers. And the reason why it's important with Capricorn is because we're talking about spirit now, and then the kind of sex energy, which is Pan, right, which is Mars, which is Venus. Mars and Venus are now in Capricorn. So there's a real deepening of asking, what does it mean to be a human being? What are these forces that drive us at a fundamental level? And Capricorn is about initiation and drive, and the bursts of the beginnings that can come. So I think we're really checking in with our motivations, with our kind of our potential and the power that we have. This is the other thing I want to talk about this week, especially as we have a pileup in Capricorn ruled by Saturn in Aquarius. There's a side of Saturn that really, I probably have contributed to not talking about this enough because we've been so restricted the past 2 years. And so it's been easy to talk about Saturn as prison, basically, or restriction and having to stay home and all of the things that we've dealt with. As a protection, all these things that Saturn can imply and that fit more with the reality of the last 2 years. But see, the other side of Saturn is immanence. It's being raised up to these kind of higher levels. And I think that this is really what I'm feeling this week with so much Saturn and a powerful Saturn in the sky with these planets. First, Venus stations direct at the end of this week. Next week, Mercury stations direct. Mars exalted in Capricorn is now there. And so there's so much power and movement forward of action coming to Capricorn over the next week or two, that it really begs us to describe Saturn and Capricorn as, again, these kind of rooted deep powers of our human selfhood. Whether that's, so sex can be literally the act, but it's also the powers behind it, right? The desire to connect with someone at a deep way. These deeply rooted motivations and this deep power that we have, remember, we can generate, right? That's how babies are from sex. They're these cells combining, and we can literally make like another one of me or you from the sex act. And then humans are so powerful. We're our own batteries. We generate power. I mean, we're just like the whole divine life force that comes through humans. So it's like this is the side of the sexual energy that Capricorn speaks to, this kind of fundamental aspect of our humanity and the power of it. And so, one other thing, and I'll mention this some a little later, but Saturn is that highest level in the planetary spheres. You have these 7 spheres, it's the moon. There's some different ordering, but basically the moon is first, Saturn is the last. And so it's this closest sphere to the divine. It's a very magical planet, and it really does encapsulate some of these fundamental aspects of our existence. And so that's the meditation on Capricorn. And I think that these kind of themes may emerge as the planets begin to move forward. Dig deep, ask yourself what you are, what do you want to initiate from your fundamental power and fundamental deep energy, your chi energy, you might say. How are you going to deploy that to kind of initiate things, especially with Mars there? Okay, let me see what else I have here. Yeah, I have the Moon-Saturn matrix. There's a lot of people that talk about the Moon-Saturn matrix. That's Saturn at the highest sphere, the Moon at the lowest sphere. So there's kind of it's a bookend by the Moon and Saturn. And the Moon is, 29.5 days to go from one new moon to the next. Saturn is 29.5 years with its synodic cycle with the Sun. So there's this kind of mirroring numerologically with the Moon and Saturn. And, you know, they both are very spiritual planets. There's whole religious traditions that worship Saturn, many that worship the moon. That can be these kind of powerful forces that people are motivated by, I think, in a fundamental way. And that's part of it, Cancer, Capricorn, that axis of initiation, the cardinal signs that are the earth and water sign, the night signs, where we're really initiating from these deep inner kind of motivations of reality. I talked last week about the moon and the matrix of the moon, kind of the moon, Gaian matrix. Well, Saturn is a big part of that. And in a lot of traditions, Saturn is feminine. Or not in a lot. In, you know, one text in the Hellenistic tradition references, maybe there's another one, but Dorotheus includes Saturn as a feminine planet. And there's some nice elegance when we do assign Saturn as feminine, when we have some just, I can't think of the word, I will think of it in a second, but where you have a mirroring. So you will have Mars and Venus, one masculine, one feminine, Jupiter, Saturn, one masculine, one feminine, symmetry. And so we can think about this kind of Gaian matrix, the Saturnine component. And remember, Capricorn and Cancer are on that same axis. So this is part of this, again, these fundamental parts of our humanity and our collective sort of, you know, what does it mean to be in a community? How do we create other beings? I mean, these are really deeply rooted questions and profound questions, and Saturn and the moon play a big role through Capricorn and Cancer. Okay, what else do I have here? So all the activity of 2020 and 2021, that's the real true pileup was the South Node, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, and Pluto in Capricorn in March 2020. But we get kind of a mini, maybe less intense version of that. Mars is back, the South Node is gone, and Saturn and Jupiter aren't there, but we get Venus and Mercury this week. So there's a kind of echo here, maybe on a smaller scale. And I think it's nice to have this transiting stellium to start the year, because remember, Capricorn is an initiation sign, a cardinal sign, and now these planets move direct, we're kickstarting. I saw on Twitter someone was saying this is the real new year. I think I was tweeting about that too like a week ago, but this might be finally getting through this retrograde winter, and we're now really moving and rushing towards this Aquarius, these Aquarius transits, but then this Pisces pot stellium with Jupiter and Neptune and Venus and Mars, and then the Aries stellium with Venus, Mars, and Jupiter that hits in May right after that. So, okay, we're deep in the Saturn moment of this winter, and I think it's good to focus on this other side of Saturn, especially as we might be adjusting collectively to, you know, what happened in 2020 and 2021. There may be some movement now where people are kind of returning to a little bit of normalcy. I'm seeing that and feeling that. Maybe travel is back open, or you can feeling more safe and comfortable, and you can get out a little bit more. It's a good time, I think, in February, in late January, early February, to start getting and just trying that on. What is it like if we're a little bit back in something closer to 2019? What will you build with that? How will you use that to build your life up and to, you know, live life well? So those are the kind of things I would be thinking about. All right. I'm just gonna move into the moon now. Let's check out what the moon's doing this week. We've got some cool lunar stuff going down this week. Very cool. I have here this Libra moon starts the week. It's one ruled by a very slow Venus. It's ready to turn direct. So now Venus is in the degree of its direct station. It will turn direct on Saturday, but that we start the week with that Libra moon. I think it's a great time to start thinking about what you're doing post with this Venus now going direct. You know, how do you want to use it? Are there people you want to reach out to? Are there relationships you want to invest in and nourish and develop and initiate? Remember, we're in Capricorn. Maybe with some folks that are a little older, folks that have wisdom. This can all be kind of Capricorn energy. I think we can move, some of these relationship constraints or delays are now going to be over at the end of this week. But this early week Libra moon, the moon goes into Scorpio on Tuesday at 5 a.m. in Central Europe. So it's really Monday here, and then the very early morning of Tuesday, where we can continue this kind of Venus, post-Venus retrograde kind of preparation. Then we have what's a very interesting Scorpio moon, which starts here Tuesday, very early in the morning, 5 a.m. in Central Europe. It is the first Scorpio moon with the South Node there. Okay, it is, so I have here exploring relationship motivations and deeper seated ruts of action. This is how I think about Scorpio. It's it's a side. So Saturn, I just talked all about Saturn and Capricorn being these kind of deeper ways of movement and initiation. With Scorpio, they're sextile, so there's this kind of supported sextile. There's some similarities there, but I think Scorpio is more geared toward, you know, the emotional side, maybe even the woundedness that has formed who we are, and then the strategy of how we can act in a way to, even as in defensive. You know, the thing about strong Mars is that it prevents war, you know, in some ways. It can prevent conflict because Mars is so, it's like carry a big stick and then you can have peace, this idea. There's something here with Scorpios about the preparation. You know, Scorpions just walk around, they have that tail, they're not really using it very often. It's only when they get triggered will they strike. And so that's kind of what we can think about with the Scorpionic. It's like getting prepared at a sort of deep well, you know, well is water, this is a water sign, but at a deeper level, thinking about and getting ready for these engagements when they come. You know, I think the other side of it is this woundedness. I've talked about this a lot on this channel. I have here ruts of action. You know, when we're children, we get wounded emotionally. This is part of the maturation process. We go out into the world and we get wounded as we're forming our sense of identity. Sometimes those wounds can be severe. There's traumas from childhood and from our social family conditioning. Those traumas can kind of calcify, and then we get in ruts of action and ruts of belief about what motivates us. This is the Scorpionic as well. It's the fixity that we have around how we act and how we're passionate. And so I think with Ketu here, Ketu is a planet of asceticism. It's inward spirituality. It's throwing away the material world and really focusing on what's inside of us. Now that the moon's triggering Ketu, and the moon is fallen in Scorpio. I mean, these could be intense moments, I think, over the next 18 months with these Scorpio moon transits where we're confronting, you know, deep wounds, deep-seated motivations, healing traumas, confronting, you know, who we are, having to be jostled by these, what may have been unconscious and then now is coming to the conscience through eclipses and through the moon transits. You know, we might have confrontations with like having the mirror up and look who I am, look what motivates me, look at these challenges. And I think triggering and seeing things can ultimately be for the better, especially if we're going to deploy strategies of healing. You know, all the things we can do that are non-astrological, like acknowledge the pain, get therapy if we need it, talk to people that we trust and that love us. These are the kind of intensities that will emerge here with the Scorpio moon, and it's square Saturn. So the fixed signs, all of 2022, now it has been activated. The nodes are in fixed signs. Saturn is in a fixed sign for the rest of 2022 and into 2023 until March 2023. So fixed signs, if you have a rising, a sun or a moon in a fixed sign, you might be, you know, confronting some deep-seated fixed ways of being. And I would get spiritual as a primary strategy. Pray, meditate, you know, any kind of spiritual practices that you can align yourself with to kind of dig into this maybe rougher road for 2022 and into 2023. This Scorpio moon is our first, you know, entree of this energy. So watch for that this week. 25. So this is Tuesday morning, 5 a.m. until Wednesday at about 8:30 a.m. in Central Europe. You're going to have the Scorpio moon, and then we kick right away into the other big story of the lunar transits now. See, mutables are freed from Ketu and from Rahu. The nodes have shifted now into fixed signs. So the upheaval and the fated beginnings and endings and the unpredictableness that the nodes can bring to the area of the zodiac that they transit, that's now gone from Scorpio. We get to kind of ride a little bit more comfortable. I was using this analogy earlier about being on a horse and now you've settled into the saddle. Now we're into the saddle. Sagittarius is the horse, half man. So we're kind of settling into this trot with our Sagittarius sector. It's very exciting. It's very, very exciting. And not only that, so this is the first moon without the South Node in Sagittarius, and the first moon in Sagittarius with Jupiter having gone back into Pisces. And so the ruler of Sagittarius, Jupiter, is very powerful all of 2022 and into 2023. Jupiter loves Pisces, its domicile, and loves Aries, where it has fire triplicity rulership, fire sign triplicity rulership. this is like a year of Jupiter. And so with K2 out of Sagittarius, there's a great opportunities the rest of this year for your Jupiter sector, particularly Sag, because Jupiter will be trine when Jupiter is in Aries, trine to Sagittarius. If you have an ascendant or any planets there, Jupiter is going to hit and trine those planets from May through October while it's in Aries. Actually, trine by sign. By degrees, I think it's like the 8th degree, something like this, then it goes backwards, 8th, 9th degree. And then in Pisces, it'll hit, it's squaring everything in Sagittarius and ruling Sagittarius. And so you've got this amazing moment here. And this moon so we go from this very intense Scorpio moon this week. Then on Thursday, we hit this kind of celebration and party that is Sagittarius. It's like a real party. I'm gonna party. I hope I'm doing some cool partying this week. Break out of, my work, locked in with work as always, but break out of that a little bit. Maybe go on an adventure, go look for someone to dance with, or like a dance club and some music. This is the kind of thing I could feel, or explore a new place, a new location, wherever you are. The side of Sagittarius where it's mutable, we're changing our mentality through actions that we take in the world. So exploration can very much, sometimes we see the world anew. What does the Dalai Lama say? Once a year, visit a new place. I think that's part of, on like these books or lists he's published, How to Live Well or something like this. This is that side. It's now opened. And it fits very well, again, Jupiter in Aries starting in May. We're gonna have a lot of like fire outward activity that I think we should be prepared for. So let me come back here. It is a celebration, the first without Ketu and without Jupiter and Pisces, so great, I've covered that. Finally, we get the Capricorn moon. This comes Saturday, 10 a.m. in Central Europe, and so we'll have Saturday and Sunday with this Capricorn moon, and this is now triggering those sea-goat themes I already explored at the beginning of this talk. The dark initiation of the winter. Dark, and maybe, dark in the sense that we don't see sometimes. Even the powers of sex. I was talking a lot about sex earlier. Sometimes it's an unseen thing. I mean, it's not really, the culture doesn't allow us to sit and openly talk about sex. That's why people like Wilhelm Reich, his books were burned, his lab was burned, he was kicked out of Germany, kicked out of I don't know his story too well, but basically he comes to America. I think he was even persecuted in America by the FDA. Yeah, he was. And his whole thing was, let's talk about the sexual force. And then he has the orgone energy generators around kind of this shame-free exploration of what sex and what sex is. That's really I would love to see Wilhelm Reich's chart. I don't have that up. I'm guessing there is some heavy Capricorn. I would not be surprised at all. In fact, I'm so curious about that, and it would really confirm. I'm just going to look that up right here while we're chatting. So because it will happen very, very quick. I just type in, anytime you want to find someone's chart, just type their name in and then type astro. And that's the only search you need, the name of the person and astro. So here it is, astro.com, the first link. So Wilhelm Reich shares my birthday. Wow, he shares my birthday. And so nothing in Capricorn, actually. Let's see what he's got here, Wilhelm Reich. He has, where is his Saturn? So his Saturn, let me just, so he doesn't have a birth time. We don't have a good birth time for Reich. So Saturn is in Sagittarius, which is interesting because I just talked about this exploration side of Sagittarius. His Saturn is there. His moon is likely in Sagittarius. What else jumps out at me? So an Aries, Sun. Maybe that's where this fits in synchronistically to the talk, because it's this fire trine between Aries and Sagittarius that we're going to get a lot in 2022 as the kind of fire of life, the kind of deeper juice of life. His Mars is on the Capricorn Cancer axis, so his Mars is actually fallen in Cancer. That's interesting, knowing his biography. I'm not going to stay too much on that chart. Let me just shift back. If you're listening, the main point, if you don't care about Wilhelm Reich, is just how to get someone's chart. The name Astro, type it in any search engine, you'll get their nativities up very quickly. Okay, let me move back here. I'm going to shift now. Let's go to my charts of the week. The first chart I want to begin with is the transit of the week. It kicks off here on Thursday, 27 January, and this is that moon applying to Jupiter in early Sagittarius. What's key in this chart is to get the moon before it completes the application to Jupiter, because as soon as that square perfects, the moon is now applying first to the sun, so that might be nice if you can get it while it's applying to the sun, but then it will be applying to Saturn. And as a general rule, we just, you know, applications to Saturn are thought to be avoided. It's just better to not have that. I think if you want to start something, you want it to go as smoothly as possible. And Saturn is not smooth. It's not going to be smooth. It might be worthwhile. It might provide a lot of lessons and great things, but it's not the kind of smooth going that we might look for the best energy of the week or the best transit of the week. So try to get the moon in these first 6 degrees here, 6-7 degrees of Sagittarius. But this is what I love about it. I already talked about the Sagittarius party, but so mutable signs are back. Mutable signs are back. If you all remember last year, I talked so much about cardinal signs being open because we had the nodes had shifted out of cardinal signs, then Jupiter and Saturn shifted out of cardinal signs in 2020. And so 2021 was a year of these open cardinal signs. When Mars was not in the cardinal axis, we had so many cool elections with Libra and Cancer. There was many Cancer elections, Libra elections that we could really dig into, you know, and now it shifts this year to mutables, and cardinals are still there as well. It's just the next 6 weeks with Mars and Capricorn, it does export those martial themes into the cardinal axis. So really we have 6 weeks of these mutables, but they're back. They have not been supported like this since May 2020, when the nodes came into mutable signs. So we get to start using like Sagittarius rising or Sagittarius moon elections because there isn't this intensity, you know. And so this is the first one. It's very cool to have like the moon here in Sagittarius. If you wanted to run like Jupiter rituals, you know, if you're into that kind of thing, you could look for like Jupiter's hour where you have, you know, the moon applying here to Jupiter and try to, you know, pray to Jupiter. These are just the kind of things that now we have the ability to do. And so it's extremely exciting. This is that transit of the week. And again, Saturn is sextiling the moon here. Saturn's strong in Aquarius. The sun, strong in Aquarius. I love having the support of Saturn right now to raise us up to eminence as we're kind of turning now out from and moving into this, you know, new part of the decade, you know, and now Jupiter's going away from Saturn. And Saturn, I think we can now look back and say, well, wow, yes, the world changed dramatically, but look at all the things that it did for you. I mean, I bet if you look back 2020 to 2021, while Jupiter was ruled by Saturn, what did it change in your life? I mean, I know for me, tons of stuff. I'm now on YouTube. I talk to you all every week, you know. You can talk to me about your chart online. It's like my whole life was transformed, and I'm very, very grateful for it. And now we're kind of move into this like phase of like, wow, it's gratitude. It's all the forgiveness of this Pisces pileup I've talked about so much, but now it's kind of like the active side with Sagittarius and the kind of gratitude that can fuel and prompt initiation. It's like I'm grateful for what's happened, so I'm going to honor that with actions and kind of moving into what was initiated more deeply. So this is that transit of the week. I love it. Mutables are back, and Sagittarius is back. Huge theme for the week. Let's check out the second chart. Let's see here. This is so I picked for my second chart the station direct of Venus. I almost went with Mars entering Capricorn because I think it's worth exploring so much, but we can talk about them both here a little bit because Mars is in Capricorn for Venus's direct station. But the blocks are removed. That's the thing about a direct station. It's a period where there's an intensification and the blocks then get removed so that the planet can now move forward as a metaphor and as a symbolic kind of truth about what's happening around themes of Venus: beauty, adornment, connection, art, the senses, sex, relationship. All of those themes, now those blocks get to move forward and then combine with Saturn. So these kind of fundamental approaches to Venus, these deep-seated or deeper-rooted, serious approaches to the Venusian themes, now all of that gets to move forward. Mars is right here to support. Mars exalted in Capricorn, able to support and kind of fuel this Venus. The thing about Mars and Venus, two planets of sex in the ancient system. Go pull up Vettius Valens. Go read his Significations of the Planets, the first chapter of the first book. If you draw a line on which planet has the most sex references, it's Mars. Mars actually is. They're not all good, right? There's a lot of problematized references to sex, the kind of things that we think when we think about sex that are negative associated with Mars, but also positive. And then Venus is right there, and then Jupiter has some, you know, so those are the kind of the three planets of sex in my view, but mainly Mars and Venus. They are now co-present, and they travel together for a long period here. It's not until May when their co-presence will finally end. And so we're sitting here on the 23rd of January. This ingress happens on tomorrow with Mars. Mars and Venus are co-present. And then there's some breaks when like one will enter Aquarius first. Venus enters Aquarius before Mars, so they're not co-present then, but the kind of the final moment where they cease to be co-present will be in late May. And so that's February, March, April. That's 3.5 months, you know, or so, 4-ish months actually, because you have most of May. So like 4 months of Mars and Venus together. And I think this is a time, and remember, eclipses are ruled by both Mars and Venus. And it just, to me, this is symbolically telling us, like, we had the period where we were separated and digitized in the first part of this decade. If we're going to be coming out of that now, we might have to relearn relationships, relearn how to engage. You know, I think these eclipses are going to ask us what's important with how we engage. And it's not just eroticism, right? These are also how we have engagement in the dance of relationship. You know, the initiator might be Mars. The one that wants to be acted upon could be Venus. You know, the way that we beautify with Venus to elicit action. It's that dance of life, and dancing is a great metaphor because you have someone that leads and someone that follows. If you've done any dancing, I grew up in Texas, we did line dancing, square dancing, two-stepping. We learned this from a young age, and you know, I would always be the leader. Sometimes you would follow, but I mean, it's part of life, the initiating force, and then the force that is the receptive force, and that's the Mars-Venus dance. You know, and they're traveling together. Now, as we get out into the world and this reality is starting to change, we're getting out of Saturn, and we might need to consider just relearning or reinventing or rejuvenating our relationship skills. And this co-present cycle, which starts this week, and then Venus being direct in this chart, it's now moving forward. We can sort of engage these themes greatly. And I think I go back to Capricorn being these kind of fundamental features of life. The whole conversation I had at the beginning, that this theme fits here too. What is love? What does it mean to connect? This is a very Saturnine way to embrace these questions rather than just feeling or going out. Some people like to, I'm not even to think about a serious question, just gonna live my life. That's one model for life. Not with Capricorn, not with Capricorn. And everything's there, Venus and Mars are there now. So let me see what else I have here. I say magical traditions, there's whole like Saturn magic and how important that, what do I have here? Venus. So I talked about that a little bit at the beginning. You know, the moon is foresight. Saturn can be this kind of god that people worship, and it's this matrix of the Saturn and the moon. Let me come back here. Venus and Jupiter have reception via Egyptian term. And again, I think this is about the co-presence of Jupiter and Saturn ended in December. This last December we just experienced. And now Venus is stationing direct, ruled by Saturn, but then Egyptian terms of Venus are Jupiter, and there's an exchange. And so there really is this sense of moving in to 2020, and with this kind of rejuvenation for beauty, love, and relationship and connection, that the stuff we didn't have access to. We can grieve, we can love, be grateful, and then try new things and, you know, explore. You know, if things are going to be open and safe and we can go explore, like, go explore. Isn't that exciting? Find people, go find connections, make connections. It's very, very cool. And whether it's erotic or just friendships or activity partners or whatever, like, go explore and make connections. I think that's what this is going to trigger. And even if it's not about this exact moment this week, you can use this to think about all of the rest of the year. Venus won't leave Capricorn until March 5th. Venus won't leave Saturn ruled signs until April 5th. And then it's leading to Venus and Jupiter meeting in Pisces, and this pileup in Pisces in mid-April. And so, you know, how do you want to use that? How do you want to get out and connect with people during that Piscean pileup? It can be a very group-oriented, spiritual activity. You know, the downside might be these kind of group delusions, but If have you ever prayed in a group or done like chanting, in a group, mantra chanting in a group, it's extremely potent. And that's the kind of Piscean, this mantra chanting where you're maybe feeling each other's energy. I don't mean not physically, but you're kind of in a group, you hear each other's voices. Venus, mutual reception, Jupiter by Egyptian terms in this chart as Venus stations direct. A direct station points us to the future because Venus will have to leave its shadow and then it'll move out of Saturn ruled signs, and it's exalted in Pisces when it meets Jupiter by conjunction. So I think this chart points us to that April moment. Okay, I think that's it. I'm going to end it there. I mean, that's really all I have to say here about Venus. I mean, you got the power of Mars and exalted with Venus and all of that conversation that we had. And then we have the Jupiter mutual exchange. So there's really not much more I think I want to say. Let's just leave it there. And let's get a card. Let's pull a tarot card, a cartomancy card, and just get an additional theme for this week. There's so much that was covered that let's see if these cards want to point us back to something to maybe go deeper on. All right, let's see which one this is. This is going to be the, let's see here, where is it? Where is that folder? Okay, there it is. So the card is going to be the Queen of Hearts, that Queen of Hearts. And this is Scorpio. This is in the correspondence system I use for cartomancy, that is to say playing card decks. The thing about playing card decks is you remove the, one of the court cards. So in the tarot you have the Knight that's included in the court cards. You have the Page or the Jack, the Queen, the King, and the Knight. So when you have a 54 card deck, you remove one of the court cards and you're left with just the three, the Jack, the Queen, and the King, or the Page, the Queen, and the King. What that does is it means you're only left with 12 court cards instead of 15. What else is 12, right? The signs of the zodiac. And so then each court card represents a zodiac sign. Whereas in the correspondence systems for the full 78 card tarot deck, those court cards actually represent degrees that overlap between signs. It's kind of a strange correspondence system and there's not a lot of uniformity around it. But that's why, part of why I love reading cartomancy or playing cards is that you get these correspondences with the zodiac and the court cards. This is a Scorpio, so I think this tells me right away, Moon in Scorpio this week with Ketu. Really think about it, really saturate in that. And then the ruler, Mars and Capricorn, these kind of deep action with Mars and Capricorn and force and power and building. And then with the Moon in Scorpio with Ketu, it's like, why are we doing what we do? You know, what is the woundedness? What is the pain that's motivating us? Feeling that pain. I know revenge, I'm going to throw that word out here, and I don't mean that the downside of revenge is it can take over and destroy us because we have the wrong motivation. But revenge can be, what do they say, best served cold? That's not the one I'm looking for. Revenge is like the sweetest, and you know, there's something, the positive side is that we have a motivating force. And we want to like win something back again. Revenge is maybe the wrong word. Vindication, maybe that's better. Like let's say you got second place last year and you want to get first place this year. Whatever goals you have, you really are working hard because you really want something. That's all what's happening here. And sometimes it's painful. We're driven by pain and hurt, past hurt, but it can drive us to succeed. And so I'm just going to think about this queen, this heart queen. You know, the other thing is being in touch with our woundedness. One of my favorite phrases that I've ever heard is we connect through our brokenness. Your trauma, my hurts and my pains. That's how we have intimacy. We open it up, we show people. It's like our jewel. They see my jewel, then they love me, and you can kind of love other people as we exchange these kind of deep wounds in a container of safe people and people that have the depth and capacity to receive. You know, so that's how I feel about this queen. It's a queen that's like, this is a queen you could say, hey, can I talk to you? And just start crying. This queen will hold you. You can share secrets probably with this queen. There's a safe container for secrets. These are all the kinds of things that could come up and be called forward by this card. So remember that transit, Moon into Scorpio, Tuesday morning, and then Thursday morning is when it leaves. This is Central European time. Maybe this is the focus here this week. Get adjusted to Ketu in Scorpio this week. All right, that's it. Talk soon. This is SJ Anderson. Thank you for being here and thank you for coming to my channel. You can support me by liking this video or subscribing to the channel. You can always go to my website, sjanderson144.com, and schedule an astrology reading, or you can support my Patreon. Helps keep these videos going. Have an awesome day. Talk soon.